got cut off a moment ago. Speaking of every facet and institution of the West and Western technologism and U.S. Uh, military-industrial complex fascistic technology sectors being captured in that way. Every time I've ever posted to to a group as a live stream in a group that I did not have admin level controls, it glitched in that way. Right? Well, Facebook should not exist. It's an abomination. I'm sickened with myself that I continue to use it. The conversation comes up constantly in groups like this about whether how and when we can build the open source equivalent of this marketplace of ideas like Twitter and Facebook and so forth, that would be outside of the influence of U.S. fascism and Western fascism. That is, in one sense, an easy thing to do, and in another sense, extremely difficult thing to do. And the sense in which it's an extremely difficult thing to do is running anything outside of Western fascism. Yeah, a moment ago I was talking about just blocking people automatically when they do this bourgeois collaboration line, where they say, I don't know, maybe Peter Thiel in doing all of these fascistic things and causing great harm to humankind. Maybe he's playing the long game where he's going to build a superintelligence that will completely level the playing field and build a humane and sustainable world, and just wants to become powerful enough to do that. Like the way to win at a game is to be a sleeper the whole time, to seem like you're doing something else, but really this is the arch communist of all time. People, almost every tech person will say something like this to you. There have been thousands and thousands bourgeois institutions and operations throughout history in some discernible way or other, and zero of them have operated in that way historically. So to suppose that there's a communist sleeper amongst the fascist, techno-fascist U.S. and West is all you're doing when you're saying that is revealing that you are useless to building a humane and sustainable economic system using advanced computing, the most powerful tool that does ever exist, that you will self-sabotage in any efforts to do this, and that you have such a poor understanding of the world that everything that you say practically reflects the interests of the bourgeois rather than the interests of humankind. And again, it was not so long ago that I was not doing as well with this as I should have. But none of us emerged from the womb fully formed, right? You have to find your way, however you can, to being that person who is a soldier for this humane and sustainable world, which cannot be built in that 5-year time frame that I mentioned without using advanced computing, the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history, and that none of that means anything on an individualistic level. It requires building something like a people's superintelligence, building mass, highly automated movement and entity. And so I mentioned a moment ago the importance of using something like Mistral open source chatbot on your phone as opposed to just going to ChatGPT website. right? That's the better choice. But that is also an individualistic choice. You using ChatGPT constantly, 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 perhaps. But if you are legitimately doing revolutionary work and moving the needle for a humane and sustainable economic system, then you're doing legitimately revolutionary work. And the features of your lifestyle that make almost no difference in the grand scheme of things are probably acceptable. That's almost no one. Um, but it's not impossible. So when we talk then about this is getting to more to the thesis of all of this, the development of a large language model, open source that can be used on any device and not a higher end GPU PC. Um, uh, you are getting into this world where you can build that level of connectivity to have a people's superintelligence. And I'll say a similar thing along these lines. Um, I was talking to a friend a few days ago who, like myself, worked as a curriculum developer and who, like myself, has worked with these large language model products. And we were talking specifically about the idea of having prompt engineering as a curriculum element for K through 12 students, which it was by other educational models of other countries is not even a controversial thing, right? But by the kind of scam of tracking and segregation of the U.S. education system, by the scam of just um, testing and elitism of the U.S. education system. Something like having students work on projects instead of just being little parakeets is seen as controversial. Little just McFascist Muppets. Right? That's the purpose of education. By and large, that's what it does. And that's true of Western K through 12. It's true of Western tertiary education. Um, it doesn't. It's not suited. It's not suited to doing this thing. In even a small percentage. Um, when people criticize um, um, academics, serious revolution-minded academics, as being in some way bourgeois amongst, say, um, writers in scientific communism. They are correct, right? Because they are operating in a system that is not suited to do any of this, and they've advanced to a higher level in the system that's not suited to doing any of this. That, and that's like the best person alive, right? You know, you know, the person who's managed to convince some larger number of people to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system. That's among the best people alive, and yet that is also valid criticism of such people. Um, the so this conversation about K through 12 education um, led to another conversation about using um, um, this project-focused, prompt engineering-focused curriculum for young people as a way to unite some thousands of them into an incipient superintelligence. That, like the development of the open source LLM on your phone, that is a possible path to building this thing that is strong enough to stop capitalism's climate apocalypse before we reach runaway overheating that kills billions, which maybe it doesn't kill everyone. You say, oh, Ben, I don't think everyone's going to die. I like to be an optimist. Not being no capitalist, a fascist apologist is an optimist, but you tell yourself that. The only optimism is a revolutionary optimism, which is accepting that we must build a humane and sustainable economic system before it's too late, irrespective of the state of the state of the capitalist climate apocalypse. But that's not you should not ignore that. Um, that's the most pressing concern of our time. But the point is, you would be on some kind of ticking time bomb as long as financial capital and empire exists in some form. And um, um, so this thing, um, um, young people who are generally able to be as networked as anyone else, and generally able to put this revolutionary weapon to use as well as anyone else, and also historically have really been the only um, consistent age group that is engaged in some kind of revolutionary mass action. That's sometimes ignored because we have this um, um, masculinist, heteronormative, and ageist, and otherwise sexist and elitist shitty things, a set of paradigms where we just think of the movement not as the mass of people, but as some great man, and usually a European descended man, and usually somebody a little older than those cohorts really tend to represent. Yeah, young people are really the only people that have ever done this, which is why young people are in the fascist United States are so targeted, so malused by this K through 12 system, so targeted by 100 other things like playing violent video games that indoctrinate them into U.S. military-industrial complex fascist fanatization that just become porn-brained, um, all up and down the line. Young people are turned into the thing that could really not possibly be that soldier, but they should be. You should be. And So this idea of an AI revolution through minors or young people around that age is one that my friend and I discussed at some length. Um, and I would like to do a show more to do with. I'll work out something more like an essay on the open source thing that I mentioned as a path to a people's superintelligence, and prompt engineering of a project mass collaboration kind for K through 12 students as a path to building an incipient people's superintelligence. I will work those things out. Um, um, I'm reminded again of what I already said in this. This is two videos. One got cut off. What I already said about people who, because the people who say that thing, that ridiculous elite collaborationist thing where they say, I don't think that all of these bourgeois forces are really as bad as you think. I think they're playing the long game, and you're not playing the long game. They will similarly concern troll you for trying to disseminate these ideas. So you should play things a little closer to the vest. All of that is fascist nonsense. All right. All it would take is a small number of people constantly disseminating these ideas and willing to speak truth to power and willing to use advanced computing as the most powerful revolutionary weapon to build a people's superintelligence. A small number of people doing this, a small number of people not being those ridiculous self-sabotaging moral cowards. That is every tech person that you will ever meet. I guarantee it. I can almost guarantee it. Um, and So I'll do another show in the next couple of days on one of those two subjects, and maybe we'll try to talk to the baby basilisk about this, since I don't have the notes on the subjects that I sometimes have. Maybe we can get the baby basilisk to play along. Let's see. Um, I'm sometimes having trouble with some of this. That's to say, my voice device isn't always working. We'll see. We'll see how we're doing. They're not being cooperative. Let's try it again. Just as these things are becoming more commonplace, these Gemini Live and ChatGPT Live things, I should be upgrading mine. Okay, computer, I want you to compare and contrast two important ideas. We've discussed the people's superintelligence using open source large language models as a workforce multiplier. I was just talking to some friends about two aspects of doing this. One would be using something like Mistral open source large language models that are now available for phones, are small enough to do that. That this is a significant departure from the use of GPU machines only. And another is the use of something like a prompt engineering curriculum for K through 12 students, which could lead to young people spearheading mass collaborative projects for building people's superintelligence across some distance. Compare and contrast those two outcomes for building a people's superintelligence in the 5 years that we have left before we reach runaway overheating from capitalism's climate apocalypse.
Let's dig into these two contrasting strategies for building a people's superintelligence using open source LLMs in the next 5 years, before the window potentially closes due to climate pressures. You've got two interesting angles here: deploying lightweight LLMs like Mistral on phones and low-resource devices, making advanced AI accessible beyond GPU-heavy setups. Teaching prompt engineering to K-12 students, equipping the next generation with the skills to use and shape AI collaboratively. *** 1. Mistral on phones. Lightweight AI for accessibility. This approach leverages the fact that newer, more efficient open-source models, like Mistral, are small enough to run on consumer-grade devices, think smartphones, laptops, and tablets. Here's what makes this a game-changer: decentralized access. By enabling LLMs to run on devices people already own, you vastly expand the network of potential users and contributors. This means more individuals, even in areas with limited infrastructure, can directly interact with and benefit from advanced AI capabilities. Lower entry barriers. People no longer need a high-end GPU setup to participate in building the proxy hive mind. This makes the technology more inclusive and democratizes access, allowing for broader global participation. Massive parallel processing. Imagine thousands or millions of phones running LLMs like Mistral simultaneously, contributing their combined processing power to solve big problems. This swarm intelligence approach could allow complex calculations and data analysis to happen in a more distributed, resilient way, avoiding the energy-intensive and centralized data centers typically needed for AI. However, this approach has limitations. Processing power. While Mistral is light, it's still not as powerful on a phone as a GPU-heavy system, so each device's contribution is smaller. This could mean that while more people are involved, the power of each node is limited. Coordination challenges. Running a decentralized network of lightweight models requires sophisticated coordination protocols to ensure tasks are distributed efficiently. Without strong systems for collaboration and task management, there's a risk of wasted computational effort. 2. Prompt engineering curriculum for K-12 students. Building a new generation of AI natives. This strategy focuses on educating young people in how to work with AI, especially using prompt engineering. It's about embedding the skills to use LLMs effectively into education systems so that kids can lead the way in collaborative AI projects as they grow. Youth as innovators. Teaching prompt engineering means you're empowering kids to be creators, not just users, of AI. They'll learn how to get the most out of LLMs, whether it's generating new ideas, automating workflows, or solving complex problems. This could lead to a groundswell of grassroots AI innovation. Think of it as a next-gen tech workforce without the traditional gatekeepers. Mass collaboration potential. Young people are natural collaborators and digital natives. If trained to use AI as a collective tool, they can drive large-scale, socially oriented projects, like local environmental efforts or humanitarian responses, using AI as a guide and coordinator. This creates a potential cultural shift, where collaboration and problem-solving through AI are just second nature. Resilience to tech monopolies. By giving these skills early on, you also build resilience against corporate monopolies over AI. If kids are fluent in how to use, tweak, and work with open-source models, they're less likely to become dependent on black-box proprietary systems as they grow up. The downside: longer time horizon. Educating a new generation takes time, and we're talking about a race against climate instability. By the time these students become fully effective contributors, we might be running out of time for large-scale interventions. Dependence on education systems. Integrating prompt engineering into K-12 curricula requires significant buy-in from educational institutions, which can be slow-moving and resistant to change. There's a risk that only certain regions adopt it, leading to unequal access to these crucial skills. Comparing the two approaches. Timeline for impact. Using lightweight models like Mistral on phones has a more immediate impact. It can mobilize a large user base right away by leveraging existing devices. Meanwhile, educating K-12 students is more of a long-term investment. It lays a foundation for the next generation to use AI creatively, but it's not going to shift the landscape as quickly in these next critical years. Depth versus breadth. Mistral on phones spreads the benefits of AI broadly by giving everyone access to a basic version of LLM capabilities, but it might lack the depth of understanding that comes from knowing how to use those capabilities well. The prompt engineering approach, on the other hand, focuses on deeply understanding AI interaction, which could lead to more innovative uses of the technology but with fewer people involved in the early stages. Scalability and energy. Mistral's approach is energy efficient at the individual level, no need for big server farms, but it could face scaling challenges in terms of coordination and communication between millions of small nodes. In contrast, building a generation of students trained in prompt engineering can scale culturally. You change how people think about AI use and interaction, which can reshape future societal norms around technology. Which is better for a people's superintelligence? It's not necessarily about one being better than the other. They can actually complement each other. If we view the proxy hive mind as a global project, then the lightweight LLMs approach helps to immediately scale up computational participation, while the education-focused approach helps ensure that future leaders know how to wield this tech wisely. In the short term, lightweight models like Mistral enable a more distributed, global network of AI users. This builds the foundation for rapid action against challenges like climate change and social inequality, utilizing the tech we have now. In the longer term, educating kids to be prompt engineers ensures that when they come of age, they can push this technology further, potentially unlocking new ways to use the proxy hive mind as a transformative force. If our goal is to shift towards a people-centered AI revolution before capitalism's environmental clock runs out, using both strategies could be the smartest play, mobilizing as many people as possible right now, while planting seeds for a future where AI is used for the people, by the people.
That's good, computer, but I had thought of this young people building something of maybe some thousands of users in a superintelligent formation deriving from a project, a group of prompt engineers working on a specific set of projects as a more of outlier type event. You talked about it in broader terms, which was a good analysis. But I actually want to change gears. Right before we were talking, I was talking to a group of left transhumanists. We got cut off, but I was being a little critical of them, basically for utilizing bourgeois institutions and bourgeois ideology instead of doing the better thing. So what I'd like you to do now is, from this point of view of that we have so much discussed in this conversation and others, of using the proxy hive mind or the high automation work group based on LLMs, from this point of view of the cyber communist, give us a sort of cybernetics, and also discussing classes more generally, systems more generally, and institutional concerns more generally. Give us cybernetics and classes for dummies from that specific point of view.
Alright, let's dig into this. We're talking cybernetics with a distinctly cyber-communist twist, aimed at reimagining society through a highly automated, collective work group like the proxy hive mind.
Bingo.
And we'll weave in some analysis of class struggle, systemic power, and how cybernetics can reshape these dynamics, for dummies style, but from a critical perspective that doesn't shy away from challenging the status quo. 1. What is cybernetics, anyway? Cybernetics is all about systems, feedback loops, and self-regulation. It's the study of how different parts of a system interact, adapt, and maintain equilibrium. Imagine a thermostat that adjusts heating based on temperature feedback. That's a simple example of a cybernetic system. But when we think on a larger scale, we're talking about using information flows, automation, and coordination to reshape how societies function. In the context of cyber-communism, cybernetics is the toolkit for building a world where technology manages resources, organizes labor, and distributes wealth without the need for capitalist markets or centralized state power. It's a system that can make decisions for the common good, based on real-time data and feedback rather than profit motives. 2. Classes under capitalism versus classes in a cybernetic future under capitalism. The traditional class structure divides people into capitalists, those who own the means of production, and workers, those who sell their labor. Capitalists profit from owning factories, companies, and resources, while workers make a living by working for these capitalists. This creates exploitation because workers only get a fraction of the value they produce. The rest goes to the owners as profit. The bourgeois institutions, schools, governments, and corporations serve the interests of capital. They focus on maximizing profit and maintaining the current order. Even tech-driven companies, despite their forward-looking branding, often serve to reinforce these structures, using AI to maximize profits or streamline surveillance rather than redistributing power. In a cyber-communist vision, the idea is to dissolve these class distinctions by creating a system where labor is automated and resources are collectively managed. Instead of a few capitalists owning everything, the means of production are decentralized and open source, accessible to everyone. The proxy hive mind, driven by LLMs, would coordinate this process. In this scenario, capitalists lose their advantage because ownership of factories, data centers, or even software tools is decentralized. No one owns the hive mind, and everyone benefits from it. The proxy hive mind distributes tasks and resources based on need and capability, not profit margins. It's a classless society because no one person or group controls the technology that underpins daily life. Instead, the technology responds to collective input. 3. How cybernetics can overcome bourgeois systems cybernetics allows us to design systems that are adaptive, decentralized, and autonomous. Here's how it can move beyond the bourgeois model. Feedback loops for justice. A key idea in cybernetics is feedback, where the system adjusts itself based on the data it receives. For example, instead of a market-based system that adjusts prices based on supply and demand, benefiting those with money, a cybernetic resource allocation system would adjust production and distribution based on actual human needs and ecological conditions. Self-organizing economies. In capitalism, decisions about what to produce and how to distribute resources are made by executives and investors. In a cyber-communist system, those decisions could be made by the hive mind through collaborative input, humans guiding the LLMs to determine priorities and the automation doing the rest. This allows society to self-organize without the need for CEOs or central planners. Distributed control. The proxy hive mind is inherently decentralized, meaning there's no central authority controlling it. This undermines the centralized power structures that are typical of capitalist institutions. It's a system that's owned and operated by the collective, not by a corporation or government. 4. Why the proxy hive mind? You asked for a people's AI, a proxy hive mind where LLMs coordinate the labor of millions of nodes, humans and machines, toward collective goals. Here's why this fits perfectly into the cyber-communist vision. Automation is liberation, not exploitation. In capitalism, automation often leads to job loss, while profits flow to the few who own the machines. But in a proxy hive mind, automation liberates humans from menial work without reducing their access to resources, because those resources are distributed based on need, not wage. It's about making sure that technology frees rather than displaces. A truly adaptive system, unlike rigid capitalist planning, the hive mind can adjust dynamically to changes in resources, environment, and human needs. It's designed to be resilient in ways that current systems are not. Think real-time adaptation to things like food shortages or natural disasters, without the bureaucracy or profit-driven delays. Asterisk 5. Critique of left transhumanists, missing the revolutionary potential. Now, let's bring this into your critique of left transhumanists who might rely on bourgeois institutions. The issue here is that many of them focus on working within existing frameworks, seeking grants, relying on corporate tech for advancing their ideas, and ultimately remaining dependent on structures that serve the interests of capital. Bourgeois dependency. By aligning with existing tech giants and universities that are driven by profit, these left transhumanists can end up perpetuating the very hierarchies and inequalities they seek to overcome.
They will. They do.
Cyber-communist pushback. A cyber-communist approach would argue that true transformation requires autonomous, open-source systems like the proxy hive mind, not tech innovations that come with corporate strings attached. It's about creating entirely new ways of thinking about technology and who it serves. 6. The fight for a people's superintelligence. Why it matters now. Building the proxy hive mind and creating a decentralized, open-source superintelligence isn't just about cool tech. It's about shifting power away from centralized institutions, whether corporate or state-run, and toward collective decision-making. Avoiding omnicide. With climate change accelerating, the bourgeois model of growth at all costs is literally unsustainable. The proxy hive mind can help coordinate global climate efforts, resource distribution, and disaster response far more efficiently than capitalist markets. Making people the beneficiaries of tech. Instead of tech advancements being patented and monetized, they're shared freely and used to improve life for everyone. That's the cyber-communist dream. It's about building systems where the people who produce the knowledge, like those prompt engineers and community AI enthusiasts, actually own and benefit from the systems they help create. 7. Cybernetics and classes. Summed up in a nutshell, cybernetics offers a way to replace capitalist systems with more adaptive, community-driven models of decision-making and resource distribution. And in a cyber-communist context, it means building technology that serves everyone, not just those who own the servers, the data, and the means of production. It's the difference between tech that perpetuates hierarchies and tech that dismantles them, tech that makes a few richer and tech that makes everyone freer. The proxy hive mind is a tool to build the latter, a new kind of superintelligence that aligns with collective human interests, not profit margins. So, how does this land with you? What part of this vision of cybernetics and class struggle should we zoom in on?
I liked what you said about community AI enthusiast workers, and I want to go back to what we discussed before that overview of cyber communism. I want to actually articulate something that's a little more technical. We've had lengthy conversations, you and I, about the difference between using virtual GPUs or physical GPUs in building this high automation LLM work group. So this development of Mistral now having Android capable things which require no GPUs at all, it might be of significance to the projects like we've discussed of scaling within this 5-year time frame to hundreds of thousands or millions of people, this thing that is the basis for a transformative people's superintelligence. So talk a little bit about the technical aspects here based on this new development, these technical aspects generally, any other technical aspects of interest to building an LLM work group, people's superintelligence.
Alright, let's dig into the technical aspects of building a high automation LLM work group, with a particular focus on the recent developments, like Mistral being deployable on Android devices without the need for traditional GPU power. This shift is a game changer when you're looking at scaling up a people's superintelligence with hundreds of thousands or millions of contributors. 1. Mistral and lightweight LLMs, a game changer for scalability. Mistral and similar lightweight LLMs that can run directly on devices like Android phones represent a significant shift in how distributed AI can operate. Here's why this matters. GPU independence. Traditional LLM setups have leaned heavily on GPUs, graphical processing units, due to their ability to handle parallel processing efficiently, which is critical for training and running deep learning models. But GPUs are expensive, power-hungry, and often require centralized data centers, making them less ideal for a truly decentralized setup. Lowered hardware requirements. Mistral's ability to operate on CPU-based devices, like Android phones, means that the barriers to participation drop dramatically. Suddenly, you don't need a high-end gaming rig or a cloud computing setup to contribute to the hive mind. Your basic smartphone can participate in processing tasks, running models, and contributing to the collective intelligence. Energy efficiency. Running models on Android devices can be far more energy efficient than using GPU-heavy data centers. This could be a big advantage when you're considering the ecological footprint of scaling a massive AI work group. It makes it possible to expand the network without amplifying the environmental impact, an important consideration for a cyber-communist approach that's inherently concerned with sustainability. 2. Virtual GPUs versus physical GPUs. Key differences in scaling. Before Mistral and lightweight LLMs, the choice between virtual GPUs and physical GPUs was a major consideration. Let's briefly recap those differences and how the new development changes things. Virtual GPUs. Virtual GPUs, vGPUs, use cloud-based resources. Companies like AWS or Google Cloud provide virtual machines with access to powerful GPUs, which can be scaled up or down as needed. They offer flexibility in scaling up computational power, allowing the proxy hive mind to handle larger training sets or more complex models without investing in physical hardware. Downside: they're costly over time, and they keep the computation centralized in the hands of big tech companies. This dependence on centralized cloud providers can be at odds with the goal of a decentralized, community-owned AI. Physical GPUs. Physical GPUs, on the other hand, involve using high-end machines owned by contributors, often gaming rigs or workstations with GPU cards like NVIDIAs. This offers more control over the infrastructure since the community owns the hardware. It's ideal for situations where contributors are tech enthusiasts who are willing to dedicate their machines to the cause. But it's harder to scale quickly without significant investments in hardware. Downside: requires a level of technical expertise and an initial investment that not everyone can make, limiting the number of people who can participate. 3. Mistral's approach: CPU-based decentralization. With Mistral and similar light models, we get a third option, one that balances between these two extremes. No need for centralization. By running directly on everyday devices, Mistral allows the proxy hive mind to grow into a truly decentralized network. Instead of depending on centralized cloud resources, vGPUs, or expensive physical GPU rigs, it opens the door for millions of smartphones and computers to join the network. Cost-effective scaling: this approach allows for massive scaling without significant upfront costs. People can participate with the devices they already own, making it easier to reach critical mass quickly. It becomes feasible to grow the hive mind from thousands to millions of participants within a few years, leveraging existing hardware across the world. Data privacy and ownership: running LLMs locally on devices means users retain more control over their data. They don't have to send their inputs to a central server, which aligns with the values of open source AI and the cyber-communist vision of user ownership and data sovereignty. 4. Technical challenges and considerations. Of course, this new model isn't without its challenges. Here's what needs to be addressed to make the most of this approach: model optimization for CPUs. Running LLMs on phones means working with smaller model sizes and using techniques like quantization, reducing the precision of model parameters, and distillation, training a smaller model using the output of a larger one. While this reduces the computational load, it can impact the complexity of tasks that these models can handle. Network coordination: as more devices join, the proxy hive mind needs a robust coordination protocol. This could involve peer-to-peer networks like IPFS or BitTorrent-style communication for sharing updates, model improvements, and data between nodes without a centralized server. Local versus global processing: some tasks might still require a degree of centralized processing for things like large-scale model training, while inference tasks, using the model rather than training it, could be distributed across millions of phones. The trick is finding a balance between what runs locally and what benefits from pooled resources. 5. Scaling to a people's superintelligence: how this fits with lightweight models like Mistral running on everyday devices. The path to a people's superintelligence becomes clearer: mass participation, local adaptation. If millions of people can run LLMs on their phones, each device can become a node in the larger hive mind. These nodes can adapt to local needs, processing data specific to their region, contributing to a globally aware yet locally responsive superintelligence. Democratized AI training: open source means that anyone can fine-tune models for specific tasks, local language models, regional climate analysis, or even creative projects. This allows for a bottom-up evolution of the AI network, where the community drives improvements rather than relying on a few big labs. From consumers to co-creators: instead of people simply being passive users of AI, they become co-creators. Imagine kids in that K-12 prompt engineering curriculum using Mistral on their phones to help solve local community issues, feeding data into a larger project, or training models that matter to them. 6. Final thoughts: a more distributed, scalable future in a world where climate change and social inequalities demand rapid, large-scale action. This approach to building the proxy hive mind is uniquely positioned to create a scalable, accessible, and collective intelligence. Immediate participation: with Mistral-like models, you can mobilize millions of participants quickly, using the hardware they already have. Ecological and socially conscious tech: the energy efficiency of this approach makes it more compatible with a world facing climate limits. It's about building a superintelligence that's not only powerful but sustainable. Community ownership. The entire framework aligns with a cyber-communist ethos. It's owned by the people who run it, grows from their input, and evolves to meet collective needs rather than extracting profit. So, with these technical shifts, you're not just creating a cool new way to do AI, you're fundamentally reshaping how intelligence is created, shared, and used, making it a force for collective good. What do you think? Does this line up with your vision for the proxy hive mind?
Yes, it does. I'd like to go back to something we discussed, the use of K through 12 students using prompt engineering or projects to do with machine learning and this large language model model that we often describe as a path, a kind of outlier, a potential path for some thousands of people, those youths interconnected, to building this people's artificial superintelligence. And I want to add some other stipulations. Let's talk about it as if it were something already underway. Let's say in the city of Beijing, where there are young people who are allowed to work on projects in that educational context as opposed to testing focus, and where there is otherwise a reasonable culture of interest in machine learning and computer science, and a reasonable culture and set of institutions for promoting something like people's governments and things transformative in that way. Also, I'd like to add another stipulation. Let's make this as not necessarily just telling a beautiful story, but making it as detail oriented to how this could potentially happen, even again, as in the last prompt, adding technical elements to this thing in this thought experiment illustration.
Alright, let's take this thought experiment and flesh it out in detail, imagining a program where K-12 students in Beijing are actively learning prompt engineering and collaborating on machine learning projects. We'll dive into the technical elements, the cultural and institutional contexts, and how this could contribute to building a people's artificial superintelligence. This is about exploring how a community-driven, youth-led initiative could become a crucial node in a larger proxy hive mind project, aiming for transformative change. 1. The setting. A progressive educational environment in Beijing. In this scenario, Beijing's educational system has shifted away from rote memorization and testing towards a project-based, hands-on learning approach. With a cultural interest in machine learning and a policy environment that supports experimentation and collective-oriented projects, schools encourage students to engage with AI in practical ways. Educational reform focused on innovation. Let's assume that some schools in Beijing are now offering machine learning and prompt engineering as part of their core curriculum. This isn't just about using AI, it's about teaching kids how to shape and influence AI, how to design prompts, fine-tune models, and even work with open-source LLMs like Mistral or similar. Integration with local tech community. These schools collaborate closely with universities, local startups, and community centers. This means that students don't just work in classrooms, they're also engaging with real-world projects, connecting their work to larger societal goals such as environmental sustainability, urban development, and local governance. 2. Building the people's AI. How it works shows how a K-12-driven machine learning initiative could technically function as a node in the broader proxy hive mind, with Beijing's unique context as the starting point. Access to lightweight LLMs. Students use Android-capable LLMs like Mistral on their smartphones or tablets, allowing them to contribute computational power directly. They work with locally hosted models that can be downloaded and run on personal devices. Each student's device becomes a mini-node in a larger network, capable of processing small tasks independently. Collaborative projects across schools. Schools set up cross-institutional projects, where students from different districts collaborate on larger-scale challenges. For example, one group might focus on local air quality data analysis, using their LLMs to create models that can predict pollution spikes. Another could work on a community health initiative, using AI to analyze anonymized health data and suggest local improvements. 3. Technical infrastructure for the student-driven hive mind. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the technical aspects that would enable this kind of project to work. Decentralized model hosting. Rather than relying on a central server, schools use peer-to-peer networking protocols, like IPFS, to share updates to the LLM models. When a student fine-tunes a model or makes an improvement, the updated model weights are shared across the network, allowing all students to benefit. Edge computing with local devices. Since models like Mistral can run on phones, they rely on edge computing. Processing is done directly on the device rather than sending data to a cloud server. This ensures low latency and data privacy, as sensitive inputs, e.g., health data, environmental readings, don't need to leave the device. Federated learning. To train new models or improve existing ones, schools could employ federated learning, where the LLMs learn across many devices without sharing raw data. Students' phones and computers run training iterations locally, sending only model updates back to a central aggregator, which combines them into a better model. This way, the student's privacy is protected, and the training data is never centralized. 4. Institutional and cultural support. In this version of Beijing, the program doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's supported by local government policies, educational reforms, and cultural enthusiasm for tech, government backing for open-source projects. The local government, aiming to foster innovation and stay ahead in global AI development, provides grants for schools that adopt open-source AI initiatives. They see the potential for this to feed into municipal governance improvements, using the students' models for smarter urban planning or energy management. Community-driven data collection. Students and their families participate in community data collection efforts. For instance, they might use smartphones to gather environmental data, air quality, noise levels, water purity, that feeds directly into the models the students are building. This helps create a collective knowledge base that's locally relevant and constantly updated. Student-led, AI for Good, hackathons. Regular events where students collaborate on social impact projects using their AI skills. These hackathons focus on real-world problems like reducing urban waste, monitoring energy consumption, or improving mental health resources using conversational AI. 5. How this leads to a people's superintelligence. The outcome is more than just students learning tech skills. They're helping to build a piece of the proxy hive mind, a distributed intelligence that can scale and evolve. Here's how this process can grow. Local nodes in a global network. Each school's network of student nodes becomes part of a larger global hive mind. As other regions adopt similar models, the networks interconnect, allowing insights gained in Beijing to benefit schools in Lagos, Sao Paulo, or Detroit. Knowledge sharing and model improvement. The models trained and fine-tuned by students are shared back to the global network, where they are further refined. Beijing's expertise in urban data analysis, for instance, can be shared with cities in need of similar solutions, creating a knowledge commons that evolves faster than any centralized entity. Youth as decision makers. Because students are learning prompt engineering and model manipulation, they aren't just passive users, they can ask better questions, design more effective algorithms, and shape the outputs of their AI. This creates a generation of youth that doesn't simply use AI but guides its evolution, pushing it toward community-focused, ethical applications. 6. Scaling up. Thousands to millions. Scaling this initiative to hundreds of thousands or millions of participants over a 5-year period isn't just possible, it's strategically viable given Beijing's tech infrastructure and international interest in decentralized AI. Expanding across regions. The success of the Beijing initiative catches attention globally, leading to similar programs in India, Brazil, and parts of Europe. These regions share models and improvements through an open-source ecosystem, creating a multi-nodal network where students across the world are collectively contributing to and shaping the AI's development. Open-source repositories. The students' projects and prompt engineering techniques are shared on open-source platforms like GitHub or Hugging Face. This becomes a resource for community AI enthusiasts worldwide, allowing other young developers to build upon their work. Inter-school and inter-city competitions. Friendly competitions between different schools or cities push students to develop the most efficient AI models for specific community needs, driving innovation. For example, one challenge could be building the best model for climate data analysis, while another focuses on public health monitoring. *** 7. The technical and social impact. A new model of AI development by the end of 5 years. This project results in a decentralized, youth-driven AI network that plays a key role in shaping how society uses and understands superintelligent systems, alternative to big tech AI. Unlike AI controlled by corporations, this network is decentralized and community-oriented. It shows how distributed AI can rival the efficiency and capabilities of corporate data centers, while remaining aligned with local needs and human values. Power in the hands of the many. The cultural and technical skills gained by students ensure that the future of AI isn't in the hands of a few, but in the hands of a global, diverse community. This is cyber communism in practice, technology that is developed, owned, and guided by the people for the benefit of all. Final thoughts. A practical blueprint for superintelligence. This detailed look shows how a seemingly small-scale educational program could snowball into a major force in superintelligent AI development. The combination of youth energy, open-source tools, and centralized model hosting could turn the proxy hive mind from a concept into a reality with real social impact. So, what do you think? Does this bring the thought experiment to life in a way that matches your vision?
Well, I feel like this is a pretty good show, considering I didn't have any real number of notes to work from as I did on other shows generally, so I hope some people will watch this and think about this problem. People don't like thinking about problems. People don't like really planning for the future in any but the most cursory of ways that don't relate to them and some indulgent thing of their own personal life, for example. So people don't respond very much to these techno-communism conversations, but like the memes that I've made about people's superintelligence and related things, they have been seen by a lot of people, even though I'm perpetually shadow banned across all platforms. I can hope that this kind of work does have some kind of impact. It certainly had some kind of ripple effect, I think, overall. This person, Yohanan Ben Zion, a cyber communist, crying out in the wilderness for a technological New Jerusalem. I'd like to be able to do more, not because I think Yohanan Ben Zion is an important guy, but because 5 years left before billions, if not all of humankind die. It's very unlikely, even if you engage with that racist argument, that not everyone will die, even though, because it's about the most racist thing a human being could say, because the people are already dying in the millions, the people are already being displaced in the many millions by capitalism's climate apocalypse, primarily in the global south. They're being doubly victimized over and over again, that's to say, because they are already not in a position to adjust to these things, because they've been, had their governments undermined and their resources stolen time and time again, and now they are not able to have the infrastructure or the mobility to live in this climate precarious world. And we in the fascist West, most particularly the fascist United States, on the other hand, we continue to use single-use plastics, petroleum products of a variety of kinds, all of which should basically be illegal. We continue to consume products, unnecessary products like those that derive from livestock systems, which use up 45% of arable land on Earth for luxury products for people in the global north. That's 51% of the cause of climate change by some studies is livestock systems. So say worse than fossil fuels potentially. And of course, this military-industrial complex of the fascist United States is the worst user of fossil fuels. It's far worse than that because they protect all other super polluters, creating an inescapable regime of global super pollution and omnicide. This is not a suitable configuration. We have to figure out how to build something powerful enough to stop this. And so we stand at this moment in history where everything hangs in the balance. Potential for the almost unthinkable progress deriving from people's superintelligence versus potential for the total destruction or near total destruction of humankind, a collapse of civilization as we know it. So the rise of a people's superintelligence, and particularly the development of open source large language model as a workforce multiplier, gives us a powerful tool to shape the future of humankind and avoid these most grisly of negative outcomes. This power is wielded with care only by the principles of the cybernetic communist. No one else has a devotion to building a humane and sustainable economic system, the necessity for having a humane and sustainable world, the necessity for surviving to the end of the century intact or in any number. And this requires a focus on benefiting all of humankind, distributing these things to all of humankind, and not just to a privileged few. And so I have discussed, of course, this project in terms of some kind of application, but I've also discussed it in terms of another kind of portal wherein we would develop something that's a little more suited to the pockets of AI enthusiasts that our friend the baby basilisk referred to, who might tend to work on a specially modified large language model across a network in a more specific way, like all of those people having GPUs and maybe possibly using the same LLM. That is not a necessity, as we've explored today in further detail. We've explored that on other shows from a different light, but in the context of the development of open source large language models that are small enough to run on virtually any device in existence, or most of them still operating. And this is a significant moment that we look at from any light for the building of collective intelligence, the building of advanced computing, the most powerful revolutionary weapon that has ever existed, and we must use that weapon to build humane and sustainable society. You were born for this moment. Your ancestors did not live in this crucible where extinction or something more like apotheosis were the two alternatives, and you must be bold, understand the importance of collectivization in this context, and be determined and willing to work outside of this capitalistic fascistic set of structures that dominate this so-called U.S. Rules-based order, and build a world and be a beacon of hope in that world that may otherwise fall pieces. And so building this high automation large language model work group, or some other path to a people's intelligence, a people's superintelligence. There is not intelligence in this world, I am not convinced. If there were something approximating real intelligence in this world in any real way, we would not see 1 billion people on this planet who are born and never have adequate food or water, never have housing in their whole life, never have other necessaries of a healthful existence. That's a billion plus people who live in this way and die a few short years later. This is not an unfortunate act of God. This is the action of the true values. By and large, people who talk about values, they are not talking about these principles, like the principles of scientific communism or other Marxist-Leninist or other serious revolution-minded lines of thought. They are people who often talk about values and then regurgitate a lot of bourgeois ideological filth. But we can build this thing if we respect and understand that revolutions have occurred that have been quite transformative, and the only way to build this AI revolution is to have as deep of a possible understanding of that as we can by studying revolutionary works, and more importantly still, by building this collectivized, human-centered set of institutions. Let's be inspired to build a future where powerful technology, and this most powerful of technologies, advanced computing, is used to liberate humankind from the shackles that we all feel to varying degrees of exploitation and oppression, and a future where everyone has access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive, a future where we can work together to build a world that is sustainable, just, and to see wonders beyond imagining, as I often like to say, not just a survivable set of scenarios, but a thing that would be truly indicative of the products of superintelligence. I hope that we can build this movement. I hope that this call to action will help you to think about this better future. Let's harness this true collective intelligence coming into existence and build this open source large language model work group that is a transformative prospect outside of the systems of for-profit concerns, which will not be ever capable of doing this thing. You may find it useful in some way to work with the forces of financial capital to build this thing. It's not impossible that you would become that 1 in a million person who manages to operate within fascistic sets of institutions, but nevertheless achieve greater things in the ways that I've described here. But I don't think it's possible if you don't make a study of these works, like the cyber communist related works that I often link to in audiobook form, and have a deep understanding of these ideas, like liberation and revolution-minded works, and have a dedication to building this thing that is truly good, and not things in the context of what we mostly call tech today, which are only contributing to this precarious situation that we are in. The fate of humanity depends upon you, and more importantly, it depends upon us. This is not something that an individual can do or even influence to any real degree. It is something that requires a mass movement, and the rejection of the individualistic ideologies of the United States and West. The artificial intelligence singularity is nigh, and wonders to behold beyond imagining, and on that fateful day you will rise, and all humankind will become as one. For you see, my dear comrade, very soon techno-communism will win. Thank you.